Super Typhoon Noboat hits Japan and the southern parts of Korea, canceling flights and causing blackouts in Jeju. The U.S. and China opened high-level annual talks in Beijing on Wednesday, recognizing the need to manage their differences and avoid conflicts. And Germany dominates host country Brazil in a stunning 7-1 victory to advance to the final in 2014 World Cup. Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kang Tae-ri in Seoul. We begin tonight with Typhoon Neoguri. It's bringing 250 km/h winds and heavy rains to Japan's southern coastline. And in Korea, a typhoon warning has been issued for Jeju Island, and officials are advising residents there to prepare. Shin Se-min has more.
Typhoon Neoguri is on the move, turning northward toward mainland Japan, bringing heavy rain and winds. In Korea, its effect is currently being felt on the southern island of Jeju, where it's left over 3,000 households without power. Earlier on Wednesday, the Korea Meteorological Administration issued a typhoon warning over the waters, saying the storm will bring torrential rain and high winds. According to the alert, Jeju Island could see up to 30 millimeters of rain per hour, with winds of up to 20 meters per second. The strongest typhoon so far in the 2014 Western Pacific season was at its most powerful when it passed Okinawa on Tuesday. At least 2 people have been killed and more than a dozen injured. Japanese officials have issued the strongest warnings to residents in the typhoon's path. Over 500,000 people on the islands were forced to seek shelter. All domestic flights to and from Okinawa had been canceled until further notice, and over 95,000 households in the region have no power.
It's been a bit tough with the power going out, but I'm glad that my house didn't get destroyed.
Neoguri has lost some of its intensity from its original status as a super typhoon, but it still remains intense, packing gusts of more than 250 km/h. The storm is expected to make landfall on Japan's Kyushu Island late Wednesday local time. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And in Seoul's National Assembly, lawmakers gave 3 of President Park Geunhye's cabinet nominees the green light on this Wednesday. Getting the nod are Lee Byung-gi for National Intelligence Service Chief, Lee Ki-kwon for Minister of Employment and Labor, and Kim Hee-jung for Minister of Gender Equality and Family. The president tapped 8 nominees for various cabinet positions last month. All but 1 have gone through their hearings and are now awaiting confirmation. Culture Minister nominee Chung Sung-keun, currently the CEO of ARIRANG TV, will appear before Parliament tomorrow. And shifting our focus, more missile launches by North Korea this morning, just days after the regime proposed an end to all military hostilities across the border. Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
North Korea fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea early Wednesday morning. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the projectiles, believed to be Scud missiles with a range of 500 kilometers, were launched at around 4 a.m. Korea time from the north's western Hwanghae-do province without prior warning. The missiles fell in international waters. Wednesday's launch marks the 13th launch of projectiles by Pyongyang this year. North Korea had fired 2 short-range projectiles a week ago, just 1 day ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to South Korea. This latest launch also comes only days after Pyongyang claimed Seoul must shift its confrontational policy toward the north to one that would lead to reconciliation between the 2 Koreas. A South Korean military official who wished to remain anonymous said the latest missile launch could be seen as an armed demonstration by North Korea to show that it can fire missiles anywhere at any time. The South Korean military has heightened its vigilance and beefed up its military readiness against any additional provocations by the North. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geunhye made a direct plea to international courts to take more of an interest in North Korea's human rights situation. Speaking at a luncheon at the presidential office of Cheongwade in Seoul Wednesday, President Park said the human rights of North Koreans must not be infringed upon and that the efforts of these officials would ultimately contribute to the peace and unification of the Korean peninsula. The judges and scholars at the luncheon were in town for an international law symposium. Among the attendees were Song Sang-hyun, president of the International Criminal Court, and Kwon Oh-gun of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. An NGO in the Netherlands is protesting the Japanese government's review of the 1993 Kono Statement. Members of the Dutch group Foundation of Japanese Honorary Debts gathered in front of the Japanese embassy in The Hague on Tuesday, where they demanded an apology and compensation for the atrocities carried out by the Japanese military during World War II. It's the first such protest in Europe since Japan released its review of the statement late last month. The U.S. and China say they need to manage their differences and avoid conflicts as they opened 2 days of high-level talks in Beijing today. But they still have so much on the table, including North Korea, territorial and trade disputes, and cyber espionage. Park Ji-won tells us more.
The world's two biggest economies launched 2 days of annual talks in Beijing this Wednesday, with Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasizing the importance of bilateral cooperation.
Sino-U.S. cooperation can be a significant achievement that is beneficial to both sides and to the world. A confrontation between the two countries will be a disaster. We should mutually respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity and respect each other's development paths.
The U.S. is being represented by Secretary of State John Kerry and Treasury Secretary Jacob Lew, and China by State Councilor Yang Jiechi and Vice Premier Wang Yang. Kerry stressed that the U.S. does not wish to contain China and welcome the emergence of a peaceful China.
And despite our differences, our two nations have the ability to find the common ground. That's the foundation on which we need to build decades of prosperity for the future, and also build the possibilities of stability and peace at the same time.
A number of issues are on the table for discussion, including a bilateral investment treaty and China's currency valuation. They are also expected to exchange views on more sensitive issues, like the territorial disputes in the South China Sea and East China Sea that have gripped the region, China's alleged hacking attacks on U.S. companies, and the North Korean nuclear issue. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to... After Samsung Electronics posted far from impressive earnings for the second quarter earlier this week, it's pushing to find its next big thing to get back on track. Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
The future of Samsung Electronics lies in the balance, and that was never more true than now. One after another, securities firms are lowering their projections for Samsung's third quarter after the company reported lower than expected earnings for the previous quarter. At least 26 securities firms in Seoul already say the smartphone maker will record an average of $8.5 billion in operating profit in the third quarter, which is a drop of more than 15% from last year's projections for the same period.
Samsung's slowdown in the second quarter is widely seen as a result of a slowdown brought on by a saturated market of high-end smartphones.
In response, Samsung is eyeing its next growth engine. One of these is the Internet of Things, where various smart devices are connected through the Internet using sensors on gadgets. As a manufacturer of electronic devices, Samsung does have a strength in this field. The company launched its smart home in April, which connects smart sensors in home appliances. The service makes home automation easy with a single app that connects and controls many home appliances, from TVs and mobile devices to internet-connected burglar alarms and light switches. Samsung is also working to promote its health and fitness gadgets. The Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center in Silicon Valley in the United States presented a service in May called Sami, a cloud platform that saves and analyzes collected data from the company's wearable devices, the Samsung Gear and the Gear Fit. Kim Jeong, ARIRANG News.
And it's not only Samsung Electronics that posted disappointing second quarter earnings. The country's top 20 companies by market capitalization are also expected to follow suit, falling roughly 7% on year. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea's top 20 conglomerates by market capitalization are expected to turn in disappointing scorecards for the second quarter. According to market researcher Evan Guide, the combined operating profit of the top 20 companies is expected to amount to about 18 trillion won, or roughly $17.8 billion, which is down 7.1% from last year. Their combined sales are also expected to fall about 1% to sit at just over $200 billion. The slip has come on the back of a stronger won, which has hit export-reliant firms the hardest. Automobile companies' profits will also be affected. The operating profit for Hyundai Motor, the second largest, is expected to come to roughly $2.3 billion, down 6.7% from last year. During the same period, Kia Motors is also likely to see a drop of almost 21%. The automobile industry says that sales will be similar to last year, driven by the sales of new cars, but operating profits will dip due to the stronger won and marketing expenses related to the Brazil World Cup. POSCO, LG Display, and Hyundai Heavy Industries are also expected to see a decline. On the flip side, firms in the financial and IT sectors will likely turn in strong report cards, with firms centered around domestic consumption set to benefit from the strong won. Samsung C&T is expected to see a jump of about 59%, Naver 32%, and LG Electronics 10.3%. LG's mobile communications division is also likely to turn a profit in the second quarter on strong sales of its new G3 smartphone, and that's expected to have a positive effect on the performance cards of affiliates that supply parts to LG and tech giant Samsung Electronics. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Korea's exports of information and communication technology products hit a record high in the first 6 months of this year on robust outbound shipments of semiconductors and mobile phones. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Wednesday that exports of ICT products came to roughly $84 billion in the first half of this year, up more than 3% on year. The record performance came despite the strength of the Korean won and an overall slump in the global ICT market. Imports of ICT products also rose about almost 7.5% to $42 billion in the first half of this year. With Chinese President Xi Jinping's recent visit to Seoul and a slew of economic deals freshly signed, it would be fair to say that the economic relationship between South Korea and China has never been better. Our Connie Kim reports on the rapidly expanding economic and business ties between these two countries.
Chinese company Tencent has begun investing $523 million in Korea's CJ Games, which it says will be completed by the end of this year. The single case of investment far exceeds the total sum of investment by all Chinese companies last year that stood at just over $480 million. The Tencent's move is a departure from a traditional investment pattern by Chinese companies that used to limit their investments in real estate. Last week's agreement between the two countries to let their businessmen settle their bilateral trade in their own currencies will open a new window of opportunities in the financial sector.
The biggest achievement with President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul was pushing for financial cooperation between the two countries, allowing direct trading between the won and the yuan, and allowing yuan-holding Korean companies to directly invest in China's stock and fund markets will greatly contribute to expanding cooperation in the financial industry.
The agreement between President Park Geunhye and President Xi last week to make every effort to conclude a free trade agreement this year will further boost rapidly expanding bilateral trade. Korea's two-way trade with China jumped more than 50-fold to $230 billion last year from 1992 when the two nations set up diplomatic ties. That exceeds a combined value of Korea's trade with the U.S. and Japan. Now, once a free trade deal is reached, the leaders of the countries expect their trade value to top $300 billion next year. Experts cautioned, however, that to keep expanding business ties between the two economies in a complementary way, Korean companies must maintain its technological superiority and improve competitiveness in the service industry. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The Korean government is speeding up its efforts to diversify oil import channels as the country is heavily dependent on crude oil from the Middle East. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Wednesday that it drastically revised an old oil bill so that companies that import oil from non-Middle Eastern countries can benefit more. Under the revised bill, companies will be compensated with the extra cost of importing non-Middle Eastern oil like London's Brent crude or African crude oil. Currently, 85% of Korea's crude oil imports come from the Middle East. The World Cup was out of our focus for the past couple of days, but the real game begins now over in Brazil, with the semifinals having kicked off earlier this morning, Korea time. It was arguably the most shocking result in World Cup history, let alone this year's tournament. Germany completely dismantled the host country, Brazil, in Tuesday's semifinal, thrashing them 7-1. Germany will take on either Argentina or the Netherlands in Sunday's final. S.J. Lee has the highlights.
With millions of Brazilian fans hoping to see their national team advance to their first World Cup final since the 2002 Korea-Japan World Cup, expectations were high. But with high expectations came an even bigger disappointment as Brazil were thrashed 7-1 by Germany. With star striker Neymar out with an injury, the bigger blow to the Brazilian team was the absence of their captain and defender Thiago Silva, who was suspended due to yellow card accumulation. And with the cornerstone of the Brazilian defense unavailable, Germany scored 5 times in the first 30 minutes. One of the goals during the 30-minute frenzy came from the boot of 36-year-old Miroslav Klose, who broke the all-time World Cup goal record once held by none other than Brazil's Ronaldo by scoring his 16th World Cup goal in the 23rd minute of the match. For Germany, it was a sweet revenge for their 2-0 loss against Brazil in 2002 World Cup final. Germany will now play either Argentina or the Netherlands in the final on Sunday local time, while they have a shot at lifting their first World Cup since 1990 when they won as West Germany. S.J. Lee, ARIRANG News.
Afghan presidential candidate Abdullah Abdullah has declared victory despite early results showing his main rival in the lead. For more on this story, Paul E. is joining us from the News Center. Paul, this latest political drama comes as at least 16 people were killed in a suicide bombing. How is this going to affect the future of Afghanistan?
Well, the dispute is threatening the nation's first ever attempt at a democratic transfer. Abdullah has denounced the preliminary results of the runoff election amid accusations of vote rigging, prompting fears of further violence. Meanwhile, the United States is warning both camps that the country may lose international aid if it can't resolve the crisis. Our Kim Young-gyun reports.
Afghan presidential candidate Abdullah Abdullah has claimed victory in last month's poll, despite preliminary results showing his opponent Ashraf Ghani up 12 percentage points.
We're the winner of this round of elections without any doubt. We will not allow the fraudulent government to rule this country for even one day.
Abdullah and his supporters claimed the vote was rigged and accused outgoing President Hamid Karzai of helping to swing the vote in favor of Ghani. The concerns are not without cause. The Afghan Election Commission has admitted that vote rigging did occur and has called for the audit of millions of ballots. Watching the situation closely, the United States warns it will withdraw financial and security support from Afghanistan if anyone tries to take power illegally.
That statement was in response to the fact that there have been reports on the ground of plans to declare victory, to create a parallel government. Both of those steps would be illegal.
U.S. President Barack Obama has spoken with both Afghan presidential candidates and asked both of them to allow enough time for an investigation into the fraud claims. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry plans to visit Kabul this Friday to discuss the disputed results. Observers fear that a standoff between the two presidential candidates could plunge Afghanistan into disorder, with no clear leader in a country already plagued by deep-rooted ethnic divisions. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
And Paula, staying with election scenes, Jakarta Governor Joko Widodo has claimed victory in Indonesia's presidential election. What are the latest poll numbers?
With more than 90% of the ballots counted, one of Indonesia's oldest think tanks, CSIS, said Widodo had gained about 52% of the vote against 47% for candidate Prabowo Subianto. Widodo from the opposition Democratic Party announced on Wednesday that he would become the next leader of the world's third largest democracy. But just an hour later, his main rival and former Army General Subianto also claimed victory, citing other quick count center results. The two candidates had been neck and neck in opinion polls heading up to Election Day, but whoever wins, voters hope the new leader can bring about change.
As a citizen of this country, it is important to be able to take part in this election, especially this crucial election. This election will bring the country to a new direction, and hopefully the candidates will fulfill what they had promised in the campaign.
There are concerns of violence once the final results are known, but outgoing President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono has urged both sides to accept the result peacefully. The election has been a massive undertaking, with 185 million voters casting ballots across 6,000 islands.
And finally, turning now to West Africa, which is currently facing a massive health crisis as it's struggling to deal with an outbreak of Ebola. What are health authorities there saying?
The World Health Organization says 50 new cases of Ebola and 25 deaths have been reported in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea since last week, and they expect that number to continue rising. In a statement on Wednesday, the UN agency said the latest figures from health ministries in the three countries showed a total of 814 confirmed infections since the epidemic began in February. The WHO said better cooperation with local communities and education is a key to slowing the spread of the deadly virus.
Now in the region there is really an awareness that it's not a country problem, but that it's a regional problem. And we have means to control it. If we strengthen the surveillance, if we work better than we did with the local communities to explain what is Ebola, because there is still a lot of resistance from the population to cooperate with health workers.
The highly contagious disease has a fatality rate of up to 90%, and there is currently no cure. Charity?
All right, thank you very much for that update, and we'll see you back here, Paul, in just about 2 hours. Let's now get to weather updates from our Kim Bo-kyung from the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, as we reported earlier actually in the newscast, Typhoon Noboat is passing through Jeju. When will they be in the clear?
Well, hopefully by tomorrow. At the moment, the storm is passing through waters 200 kilometers of Seogwipo, Jeju. It should move closer to the island as the night progresses, but make a turn towards Kyushu, Japan by tomorrow morning. Due to the typhoon, we're experiencing some mixed, harsh conditions. Those down south are getting heavy precipitation and strong winds,
Plus, a typhoon warning has been issued for Jeju and waters south of the peninsula. The storm also brought with it hot and humid winds, leading to the first heat wave warning of the season for Seoul as well as Gangwon-do and Gyeonggi-do provinces. On to Thursday's readings, Seoul soars to a hot 33, while cities down south hit the low 30s. On to other places. Well, Daejeon jumps to 33, Dokdo and Jeju to the mid-20s. Ending off with World Cup of weather, the Netherlands and Argentina will play their semifinals over in Sao Paulo under moderate conditions in the mid-teens. That's all the updates for now, and we leave you with the international weather.
And that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here at 10 p.m. Korea time for Primetime News.